Honorable Menier.
Chairperson, we are in deep economic trouble with 9.4 million people who do not have jobs or have given up looking for jobs in South Africa. So we need to consider every proposal that would give hope to the 9.4 million people who do not have jobs or who have given up looking for jobs in South Africa. Now, the Commander-in-Chief, the Honourable Julius Malema, has made such a proposal, which is to nationalise the banks without compensation in South Africa. The idea of nationalising the banks is hardly original and is shared by the Finance Minister's economic advisor, Professor Chris Malakane, who seems to have attended the Hugo Chavez School of Economics. The boardroom communists who talk like workers and who live like bosses inside the South African Communist Party, and the thugs who act as the Gupta's stormtroopers from Black First, Land First. So let me be clear from the start. The idea of nationalising the banks without compensation is not just a bad idea, it is a mad idea that would crush the hopes of the 9.4 million people who do not have jobs or who have given up looking for jobs in South Africa. The EFF, who, like their hero Hugo Chavez, wants to nationalise the banks without compensation, which means seizing ownership of 16 domestic banks, 15 foreign banks, 3 mutual banks and 2 cooperative banks, and seizing the assets of the banks, whose loans and advances totaled 3.7 trillion rand and whose assets totaled 4.9 trillion rand in 2016-17. This in a sector which is actually creating jobs, with 140,000 jobs created year on year in South Africa. The fact is that when it comes to nationalisation of the banks without compensation, the EFF has clearly not thought through its proposal and has not done its homework. First, the nationalisation of the banks without compensation would be unconstitutional.
Please take your seat. On what rule are you standing, Honourable Member? Ke go theleditše tswela pele.
O ganetšago motho go diriša dika ge a bolela tše di thušago. Bjale ke tšhaba gore nkgapele go tlo ema tlou a mamo o tlo bina kiba ya
Go lokile mara o kwele as a point of order. Tswela pele. Honourable Menir, please continue.
Thank you, Chair. First, the nationalisation of the banks without compensation would be unconstitutional and therefore illegal in South Africa. Second, the first objection to the nationalisation of banks without compensation will not come from white monopoly capital, as he surely hopes it will, but from his best friends in Beijing, who are significant owners of the biggest bank in South Africa. The Industrial and Commercial Bank of China will surely not take kindly to the nationalisation of their 53 billion rand investment in Standard Bank, and it will not be long before they come knocking on his door. Third, the second objection to the nationalisation of the banks without compensation will again not come from white monopoly capital, as he hopes, but from the thousands of hard-working contributors and thousands of beneficiaries of the Government Employees Pension Fund, who are significant owners of banks in South Africa. So let the hard-working people, like the thousands of policemen who protect us, know the EFF want to seize part of the 66 billion rands of your savings invested in Standard Bank. And let the hard-working people know, like the thousands of nurses who take care of us, that the EFF want to seize part of the 35.7 billion rand of your savings invested in First Rand. And let the hard-working people, like the thousands of teachers who educate us, know the EFF want to seize part of the 18 billion rands worth of your savings invested in Nedbank. And let the hard-working people, like the thousands of social workers who take care of us, the EFF want to seize part of the 12.8 billion rands of your savings invested in Investec. And finally, let the thousands of pensioners who rely on us to protect them and to protect their savings, which they have accumulated over years of hard work, know the EFF want to seize part of the 10.3 billion rands of your savings invested in ABSA. And fourth and most obvious, the nationalizations of banks without compensation would trigger an economic meltdown, which would ultimately result in recession, massive job losses, and even greater poverty in South Africa. Of course, what is terrifying about this debate is not just that political formations like the EFF want to nationalize the banks, but that the banks themselves are silent about the nationalization of banks, preferring to bury their heads in the sand, wave their white handkerchiefs, or more often than not, jump up and lick their opponents like grateful Labradors. Whatever the case, the fact is that the nationalization of the banks without compensation is not just a bad idea, it is a mad idea that will crush the hopes of the 9.4 million people who do not have jobs or who have given up looking for jobs in South Africa. In the end, to give hope to the 9.4 million people who do not have jobs, we need to boost economic growth by announcing a package of structural reforms to build business confidence and stimulate private sector investment. We need to stabilize public finances by implementing a haircut on all mandatory cost containment items and implementing a comprehensive spending review. We need to support the independence of financial institutions by making a strong statement in support of financial institutions like the South African Reserve Bank, the Public Investment Corporation, and National Treasury. We need to reform zombie state-owned enterprises by putting the national airline into business rescue with a view to stabilizing and then privatizing South African Airways.
Honourable
And we need to mitigate the significant long-term fiscal risks by terminating the nuclear build program. I hear Barney.
Please take your seat. What are you raising on, Honourable
Is the
Member?
member ready to take a question?
Honourable Menir, are you ready to take a question?
I'm happy to take a question in Barney's after the debate, which is where the member normally resides. Speaker, in conclusion, we hope that the next debate will be on proposals that will grow the financial sector, not proposals that will crush the financial sector, so that we can find ways to extend banking services to more and more people, especially more and more poor people in South Africa. I thank you.